what a soft launch is, Taplines listener? I'm not talking about announcing your new relationship to Instagram with a demure photo of you and your partner holding hands, faces just outside a frame. Hell, I don't even know if people actually still talk like that. I'm 36 and happily married. I can't keep up with Gen Z dating vernacular. It's a bad look. Anyway, where was I? Oh, right. Soft launches. In the context of the beer industry, this is how you might describe trialing new brands. You choose a test market, you give away shitloads of samples, you gather feedback up for corporate, and ideally, you've laid the groundwork for a full national rollout. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most important soft launches in the modern American beer business, with someone who is there for the whole damn thing. Kimberly Clements is the founder and managing partner of Pints LLC, a beverage industry consultancy, but her roots run deep in beer distribution. Her family owned and operated an Anheuser-Busch wholesaler in Tucson for 3 generations, only selling it midway through last decade. Kimberly joins Taplines today to talk about the St. Louis macro brewer's introduction of a little beer called Michelob Ultra, which Anheuser-Busch III personally selected her distributorship to soft launch in Arizona in 2002. And 22 years later, it's remade the way Americans think about beer. And for better or worse, I'll let you decide. And it's also become Anheuser-Busch InBev's post-Bud Light flagship in the process. But it all started in Arizona back in the early aughts. And Kimberly was so kind to take us there, as only a handful of insiders ever could. It's Kimberly Clements, it's Michelob Ultra, it's how Anheuser-Busch built its biggest brand this century, and it's all right here, right now, on VinePair's Taplines. We've got a real treat for you today, Taplines listener. We're joined in the virtual Taplines studio by none other than Kimberly Clements. Kimberly, welcome to Taplines.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Now, listener, you don't know this because you're joining us after we figured out all the technical difficulties. But Kimberly and I, and Darby Seasai, our intrepid producer, had to weed whack through a virtual forest of technical difficulties just to get Kimberly on the air. We suspect that maybe dark forces have conspired to keep this episode from ever seeing the light of day on your podcast feed, but we persevered. Kimberly, we made it. We're here.
Yeah. Well, maybe Kimberly just needs a new laptop.
After that, yeah,
get right. On the list.
After this, we send you to the laptop store. But for now, Kimberly, we get into this Taplines episode. We're so glad to have you on the show. Kimberly, where are you joining us from today?
I am in Tucson, Arizona right now.
Nice. How's the weather?
Well, I would have been recording this outside if there wasn't so much noise.
What do you got? Leaf blowers?
Beautiful outside today.
Nice.
And, yeah.
The sunny Southwest.
Yes.
A land of.
But it lives sort of close to the Air Force Base, so it gets a little noisy. And I'm working from home today, so yeah.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you staying indoors to spend some time with us today. Kimberly, tell us a little bit, for the listeners who aren't familiar with you and your long career in and around the beer industry. I thought maybe we could start with your entry to the beer industry, way back when. Tell us how you got started on this journey in the industry.
Well, my grandfather was a beer and liquor distributor. My dad was a beer distributor, and I had some interest in it from a very young age. So
purely academic.
What's that?
Purely academic. No, not the product. Just really.
Yeah, right. So at a very young age, I was 15 when I started working in the company, and our company, which was located in Arizona. So it was called Golden Eagle Distributors. And I started working in the company, doing a lot of different jobs. Even in college, I was working as a college rep, going into bars and restaurants, doing promotions and doing stuff like that. And then after college, I got a regular job at the company. and worked my way through different departments, worked in marketing, sales. I was a sales rep. I've done merchandising. I've done pretty much everything
Yeah.
in the company. And then finally, eventually, like early on, my father actually passed away when I was in the company for about 5 months.
Mhm.
And then my mom took it over, and I did, as I said, I worked my way through it, and then eventually became the president of our company. I don't even know what year it was, so long ago. And then ran all the day to day operations for our 7 locations throughout the state of Arizona. And then we eventually sold our company in 2016, where my colleague who was running our sales department at the time, Dan Lust, and I launched our venture, which is called Pints. And we work with suppliers and distributors throughout the country on a lot of special projects, anywhere from data analytics to expansion planning, scale back planning, succession planning. We've done M&A, worked behind the scenes on a number of different deals. We've worked with some of the top, well, all the big suppliers that you would know, and some of the very smallest suppliers that you wouldn't know. So
Yeah.
we worked kind of all over the business on a lot of different special projects.
Listener, you're getting real privilege here, as you know, because you know enough about the beer industry to understand the 3-tier system. It's somewhat of a rarity to have someone with Kimberly's level of experience and visibility and hands-on day-to-day work in the middle tier come forward and come talk to us here on Taplines. We always want folks from the middle tier to come here, but very few people with with those types of credentials answer the call. So I feel lucky, Kimberly, that you're here. I bet our listeners feel lucky that you're here. Let's talk a little bit more about how sort of we're gonna, in just a moment, we're gonna scroll backwards to the moment that I suppose this episode is really about. But when you reached 21, of course, you had your first sip of beer.
Yeah.
What was your relationship with beer early on as a new LDA, as a new legal drinking age consumer of beer? What did you grow up with? What was popular at the time?
Okay. Well, first of all, we had beer around our house growing up. That was just our lifestyle. My dad always allowed me to have, some
A
of his
table
beer.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I grew up in a very, in a house that allowed us to experiment with alcohol. I'm not saying
Mhm.
that's right or whatever, but when I turned 21, I didn't go crazy. Okay,
Yeah,
with
right.
all the drinking, I was very responsible about my drinking, and because it was part of our lifestyle. So unlike my roommate at the time in college, um, who went a little, got a little crazy in her cups,
Sure.
I did not. So at that time, though, when I turned 21 and I was a college rep, the popular beers were Bud Light, Coors Light, Keystone Light was very, very popular at the time amongst college students here on the
Mm,
West Coast. I
mm,
went to the University of Arizona,
mhm.
and that was really popular. Zima was just coming
Sure.
along at that time, and everyone was just all about Zima.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, like Bud Light, Coors Light, Miller Light wasn't as popular here on the West Coast, but Keystone Light was very, very, that was the budget beer that was popular. I remember we used to sell a lot of natural light at that
Mm,
time too. Um, that was pretty popular
yeah.
amongst the college students. So
Natty Light, known now as obviously a sub premium sort of standby for college students, but a lot of folks don't know, or I didn't know until I spoke with Maureen Ogle, a historian who wrote Ambitious Brew. Listener, you can go back and find those episodes on Taplines. The Natural Light was actually Anheuser-Busch's first dabble into the light beer segment before they rolled out Budweiser Light in 1982. they took a spin with Natural Light, I think a couple years prior. Does that ring? Is that more or less right to you, Kimberly?
That's
Yeah.
correct. Actually, Natural was a brand of its own. Like there was Natural, just regular Natural.
Natural heavy, yeah.
Yeah. Which, obviously you can't find it. It's
right.
It was discontinued years ago, but I remember that we used to sell regular Natural and then Natural Light, and we were actually Golden Eagle. My former company was a test market for Budweiser Light back in the day, and at that time, it was Budweiser Light, and then obviously Bud Light for better bar call.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
that was a big deal, right? And I know this isn't the meat of the matter, but we're talking about line extensions off of Anheuser-Busch's, most important brands. Bud Light obviously is the most important line extension and became the most important brand for Anheuser-Busch. But Michelob, which we'll get to in just a moment, was also quite important, was a super premium. And that the extension that we're going to be talking about was also a big push. I'm curious, do you remember, before we skip ahead 20 years later, 1982 is when Budweiser Light gets introduced.
Mm-hmm.
How big of a deal was it when they when they finally decided to extend the Budweiser brand? I mean,
I just remember, I was pretty young.
No, I know. Obviously, you weren't there for it.
I just remember all the different promotions that were going on at that time that wouldn't be allowed these days at all. If you look back in the archives of Bud Light, all the advertisements, and that was what our marketing team was doing, like some of those types of promotions.
Sure.
So, and I remember, like Spuds MacKenzie really kind of catapulted everything. And at that, one of my first jobs in the company is that we used to have a gift shop, and I would work at a gift shop. And
what do you mean? The Golden Eagle, the distributorship, had a gift shop?
Yeah.
Why?
I would sell, I would sell Spuds MacKenzie stuff, and all my friends wanted Spuds MacKenzie stuff. And I was young. Yeah. I think I was 15 when I started in the gift shop, but, everyone wanted Spuds MacKenzie stuff. And in fact, my business partner and I in our office, we have a Spuds MacKenzie like neon dog that everyone comes in and, is like, oh, that's so cool. I have tons of memorabilia.
I bet.
From Anheuser-Busch.
Spuds was what, like 86, 87, I think he got introduced?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, and Spring Break. And listener, I assume everyone is familiar with Spuds MacKenzie, but maybe for some of our younger listeners who don't have the pleasure, we're talking about a bull terrier, right?
Yeah,
that was the type of dog? It was a mascot, Spuds MacKenzie, the original party, or the original party animal?
Yes.
Is that what the tagline was?
The original party animal.
And it was
there
gangbusters.
Alex. Remember Alex from Stroh's?
That's right.
They made a song out of.
And the Coors Light Beer Wolf was also another they tried to glom onto as well. So anyway, a lot of canine promotions around the late 80s. And Anheuser-Busch started the trend. But Kimberly, we have the Taplines time machine. It's not actually a piece of equipment. It's more of a state of mind, but we hand it over to our guests when it's time to jump backwards in time to a specific year that our guest thinks, gets at, the beginning of the story that we're here to tell. Of course, we're here to tell the story of Michelob Ultra, which has become, I don't think it's even that much of an argument, the most important beer for Anheuser-Busch InBev in 2024 in the U.S. market, at least. It's really, kind of the heir apparent there. But that was not always the case, Kimberly. And you were around at a very particular time when Michelob Ultra first got extended off of the Michelob brand. What year do you think we ought to scroll back to in the Taplines time machine to start telling that story?
Well, we're going to scroll back to 2001.
Okay. It's the early aughts. It is the new millennium. You're working at Golden Eagle at this point.
Yeah.
What's the most important brand in your portfolio at this time?
Bud Light.
Bud Light, no question.
Yeah.
Okay. And nothing, Tequila's not really doing much. The Ritas haven't showed up yet.
Yeah.
What else is in the portfolio?
At that time, we were an exclusive Anheuser-Busch distributor.
100% share of mind.
So, yes, 100% share of mind. We hadn't brought on any of our craft partners at that time, I don't believe.
Mhm.
And those came later. And so Michelob was still in the portfolio. The Michelob brands were still
Yep.
in the portfolio.
And what was it? You had
'cause-
like Amberbach, you had Honey Wheat, you had
No,
light,
we had like
Michelob Light, right?
Michelob Light were
Yeah.
still in the portfolio, but Anheuser-Busch had really kind of started to lose a little focus on those brands. When I was a kid, there was the tagline was "Weekends were made from Michelob." Okay, so Michelob was really special. It was something a little more premium.
Yeah.
Special teardrop bottle.
With the great shoulders. Yeah, really iconic bottle.
It was an iconic, it had differentiation between all the other glass products.
Yeah.
And so Weekends were made from Michelob, and it was a premium product. And there was just kind of a lack of focus, I think, lack of funding or marketing. They just kind of like lost sight of it. And so we were still selling a little bit of it back then as well.
Got it. And I remember, I don't know when this ad came out. It was probably after this, but Michelob was always special in the portfolio. It was a super premium even before, maybe that term kind of became a buzzword.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the marketing was quite good and really drove that point home. Some of it was chintzy, of course.
Well, it had all imported hops, and that was special. So they made it like special,
Yeah. But in 2002, in 2001, your Bud Light is the most important thing in your portfolio. But obviously, you have craft kind of going through it wouldn't quite slump. Yeah, and when did the first slump hit the Arizona market for craft? When do you remember that happening? Was the shakeout late 90s or more early aughts?
Oh, geez. I don't even remember.
Thereabouts, though. I mean, like, craft was in the picture, and full-flavored beer was starting to register with American drinkers, and I'm guessing to some extent with Arizona drinkers. And Michelob was probably more well-positioned to address that need, or at least be adjacent to that need than
the imports
Budweiser.
started. Yeah. It was the imports that started to really gain traction at that time, and that was what that was why Michelob Ultra was kind of founded on.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Michelob Ultra, and I think like the reason. I mean, we wanted to have you on the show for many reasons, but one reason is it's easy to get the perspective of the mothership, right? We can go back and read the St. Louis Post-Dispatch articles, and I have about in 2002. Here's what was it Bob Peacock? What's Mr. Peacock's name? Yeah, Dave. Thank you. Dave Peacock thought Michelob Ultra was going to do for the market, right? But listener, again, think of the 3-tier system. This is not something that just gets handed down. There's got to be buy-in from distributors to go out and bring that product and position it properly in the market. I'm curious, Kimberly, when Golden Eagle first gets word of a line extension off the Michelob brand family, which was important, but not doing poorly, but there was not as much focus on it. Okay, they're gonna do another extension on Michelob. Interesting. What was your initial reaction when you first heard that there would be something called Michelob Ultra coming down the pike?
The only thing that could really think of is that, they hadn't really done at that time a ton of extensions of things.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of innovation in the pipeline yet, like there is, today. There's always something. And I used to sit on the innovation panel at Anheuser-Busch back in the day. But we hadn't really seen anything like this yet, obviously. And this is actually August A. Busch III, which we call the Chief. It was the Chief's pet project. Okay.
Okay.
And when
Ultra was.
I tell you that, it you don't want to let this guy down, okay? Like, you don't want to mess this up, because
Right.
if it was important to him, it was important to the wholesalers. And he made it so important that it couldn't fail.
Mm.
So when he said, "I want you to do this, you better go and do this." That's how he kind of ruled the roost, so to speak.
Yeah.
So when he made it important, to him, it was important to you too, and he personally was involved in this, which really didn't happen very often. Now,
Yeah.
I had a different relationship. Mr. Bush was a friend of my dad's, and like I've known I knew the family for a really long time. So
Your grandfather knew Gussie, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
They used to go hunting together. So
where? But not in Arizona.
yeah, like pheasant hunting or something. I don't know.
In Arizona? Are there pheasant in
I
Arizona?
know, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long time, relationship between the Bush family and the Clements family. So when actually when my father died, just on a side note, Mr. Bush was couldn't have been better about making sure, like, I got the training I needed, making
Mm.
sure that I went to other distributors and saw what they were doing, making
Mm.
sure that, like, we were really kept to a high level at the top, and he personally oversaw that. So, I owe a lot in my career to, obviously, to the Bush family.
And to that mentorship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So back to Michelob Ultra, like, it was his pride and joy. He was going to make this happen, and so that's why it became, important to us.
in 2002, Kimberly, for those who are not as familiar with the castle intrigue or the Kremlinology of Anheuser-Busch and the mothership in St. Louis from that era, August Bush III, the chief, or as some people call him, Three Sticks,
Yeah.
or whatever. I'm sure people had more rude nicknames than that for him when they were on his
Yeah.
bad side. But this was right around like he was at the zenith of his power, right? August Bush IV, who was the heir apparent, was in the wings, but the chief was still very much in control. So when he said Michelob Ultra is going to be it, as you say, it sounds like everyone there was no question about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you say no. Okay. When he says you're the test market, you don't say no.
Right, right. You said
So
thanks. Yeah.
yeah, well, because also it's an honor to be the
Sure.
test market. It creates more work and whatnot, but it's an honor to have that, kind of newness, and get that kind of support to your market, and get some, funding, and being able to do different stuff. That's kind of cool as a distributor.
No doubt. I imagine that is pretty exciting. Can you give our listeners, to the extent that you remember the granular day to day, can you give our listeners what it meant to be a test market in terms of, like, I mean, are there folks from St. Louis who are in market for 3 months helping you with merchandising? Are you getting special collateral? Like, are you doing specific account calls? Like, tell us a little bit about what that meant in 2001, 2002, when you were actually tasked with bringing this new thing to market.
Yeah. Just to give you a frame of reference.
Please.
So you mentioned Tequiza. We were also
Yeah,
a
yeah.
test market for Tequiza, and we didn't get the kind of support behind that,
Yeah.
because August A. Bush III wasn't as involved with that. So
Right.
when, because he was involved, it was on a whole nother level. Okay.
Mm.
And this was just for our Tucson market. So we had other markets throughout the state. And so if we're only doing Tucson, it did create, some issues because of chains and stuff like that. But yes, I have a funny story about when August came out and was
Please.
drilling everyone about the numbers, and I had to pick him up at the airport, and I just had like this little car. I had to go in on the tarmac, and everyone had to, get in it. And then we drove around for like an hour before.
To accounts?
We didn't visit accounts.
Okay.
He was just drilling me for what's going on, like all the information. And everyone, there was.
So you just kept driving around because he kept on asking you questions?
There was like 30 or 40 people back in the hospitality room at my office waiting for him to come. And, and like I was just driving, and he was like, go over here, go over there. And like,
have you ever seen the movie Collateral? You're like Jamie Foxx in Collateral. You're the taxi driver. You can't get out of the car because Tom Cruise is telling you where to go.
I mean, it was just, and his son Steven's in the back with John Jacob, who is one of his board members. And they're in my tiny car, and we're just driving around. And the advice that I got from one of my colleagues, and also one of our sales managers, the sales manager for Arizona for Anheuser-Busch, was like, if you don't know the answer, he knows that you don't know the answer. So don't try to pretend that you know the answer. Just say, I'm not sure. Let me get back to you on that. Because he wanted to make sure that I knew what was going on, and he wanted to like test, but then he was asking questions about how his team was doing, because we were getting a lot of support. There were people, there was probably more point of sale than we knew what to do with.
Yeah,
wow. There was like, we would go out and do taste tests. We would go out and do samplings and at golf courses and stuff like that. That was kind of like the vibe back then. The vibe of the brand was supposed to be that. So he wanted to know kind of everything that his team was doing, how much we were spending, who hadn't taken it yet. Because I distinctly remember when we finally got to the office, he was drilling people in the meeting, and I felt so bad for one of my friends that worked at Anheuser-Busch. Her name was Beth, and she was in charge of the Circle K account, which it hadn't been placed in all the Circle Ks yet. And she just, I just felt so bad for her, because
a bad day for her.
He was like grilling her on, all the reasons why. And then, after that meeting, some people got moved around. There was a big shuffle, and
wow.
But to get back, we did get a lot of support.
A lot of people in the market.
Different.
And this is a big sort of, as you said, this is a big push. Listener, I want to, and Kimberly, maybe this will be a refresh for you, although I bet you know this, at least, even if you don't know the numbers exactly. I pulled up a St. Louis Post-Dispatch report from August 29th, 2002, and they've got some sales figures for us from Information Resources Incorporated. That's a scan data buyer from, I don't know, way back, I suppose. Now
it's now
Circana or Nielsen IQ. There are, that's our Montagues and Capulets of the scan data world, right? But anyway, back then it was Information Resources Incorporated. And, to your point, Kimberly, you spoke to this earlier, imports were coming on strong in the early aughts. You have Corona Extra leading the charge in case sales. They're at 15.1 million. They're up 9.2% year over year. Then you've got Heineken, 8.35 million. It's up 13.4% year over year. Michelob Light's not doing too bad. It's in third in this category, or in this cohort here. It's 7.97 million cases and up 4.5% year over year. But in fourth and falling fast, we have Michelob, 3.61 million cases, down 7.2% year over year. So I just wanted to bring that up to give us a little bit of data context on the environment, or the content, or the landscape into which Michelob Ultra was moving as this new line extension that Kimberly was tasked with. Kimberly and her team at Golden Eagle were tasked by August Busch III with bringing out to thirsty drinkers of Tucson, Arizona. How did How did the drinkers receive Michelob Ultra early on? Do you remember the initial reactions, Kimberly?
Yeah, I actually do, because funny enough, that's where I met my ex-husband,
Oh, wow.
was about Michelob Ultra. So I remember it very well, because we launched in 2001, and then into early 2002. That's how I met my ex-husband. He asked me, what's this Michelob Ultra all about? At a basketball game. So that was how we met.
Wow. And you said, well, I'm so glad you asked.
Yes,
I actually
let me
have
tell you all the things.
Would you like some point of sale materials?
Well, if any girl could talk about beer, that's very appealing to a lot of men, right? So, you want to know about 95 calories and 2.6 grams of carbs?
Yeah, right. I've seen the Beechwood Staves in St. Louis, and what are you doing on Friday night?
Right. So yeah, I mean, the initial reaction was that it was very light in flavor. People really liked being able to drink more of them. Yep. But the funny thing was, because it was so light in flavor, and it was, you could drink more and not feel like all kind of bloated, but what we were supposed to do as our test market was it was supposed to be for what we would call mature adults. So not people my age at the time, but people retirement age, actually, because August Bush the third, he was noticing that his friends were also drinking more cocktails on the golf course, because they just said, beer just bloats me up, and I want, something lighter, and so that's why that was really why it was. That's why he created this beer. Yeah. So we were supposed to really go to retirement communities and golf courses and places like that to do samplings. And as we started to find out, and that was part of our findings, is that more people are curious about this than just retirees, because he wanted us to hire. I remember one of my colleagues at the time, he was probably in his early 60s. And he was like, I could be the mature adult marketing rep. I'll go I'll go sample at golf courses and stuff like that. And so I remember like how kind of funny that was, because we hadn't had a mature adult, marketing rep. We had contemporary adult marketing.
Typically, that's the opposite of what you need, right? You need to get young legal drinking age drinkers interested in your products, not the
older people. And so because the younger people that were, about my age or thereabouts, they were really wanting to try it. They were more apt to try it than the older, adults. And as I was thinking about it, like, as I said before, golf courses were very important, but that lifestyle, that active lifestyle became kind of a part of Michelob Ultra. Also at that time, I remember we rolled out with these smaller cans. So Michelob Ultra in the test market didn't roll out in 12-ounce cans.
Okay.
They had 12-ounce bottles, but not 12-ounce cans. And so people would say less calories, less carbs, less beer. Like why? And so eventually, testing showed that they want a 12-ounce can, or they want a larger packaging for this brand. Yeah. And then, because we only started in a couple SKUs of this product, and then it obviously, when they went national later on, as Anheuser-Busch does, they scale up the SKUs,
Yeah. No one scales up like Anheuser-Busch. Then and now.
They have the ability to definitely do that. Yeah.
What was there a draft? Like, what was the on-premise push like?
On premise, just like, and this became a thing that I would always say: sample, sample, sample. Like,
Hmm.
just doing the sampling, people liked it, and really liked the drinkability of it. And
Yeah.
so the more sampling, and we were always out sampling, and so on premise, it was doing really well. Off premise, the only problems that we had, in, just some hiccups, were the chains, because Golden Eagle, our Anheuser-Busch footprint, Golden Eagle, our company didn't have Metro Phoenix,
Hmm.
where a lot of the decisions got made. So we had East Phoenix and West Phoenix, and south of Phoenix and north of Phoenix.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we didn't have like the Metro Phoenix. And so many, the chains really wanted it everywhere. Like the
But the
Circle K's
buyer who
and
would
the
make the
Krogers,
decision, got it.
they didn't want to compartmentalize the
I
state,
see.
and you could get it here but you can't get it here. And so that was like a little bit of a hiccup that we had, but for the most part, it works itself out, and it was fine.
How does I'm a dummy, or I'm at least not nearly as attuned to the nuts and bolts of that sort of dynamic as you are, and you actually lived it. How does that work itself out? I mean, obviously, August Bush III wants this to happen, which means that whoever had whatever the Red House was in Metro, what was it, Hensley?
Hensley, yeah.
Yeah, so Hensley's and it got Metro Phoenix. What is August Bush that there's the chief place a call and say, "Hey, we want to cover the chains here. We need you to get on board." What happened in that
Oh,
case?
it wasn't like Hensley was like, no, we won't get on board. They would have gotten on board in a heartbeat. It
I
was
see.
just
I
that we
see.
needed to finish our testing. We needed
Got it.
to, see how things were going. And
Hmm.
there was eventually, yeah, obviously Hensley wasn't going to say no to it. They saw the sales. They were very in tune with what we were doing, and got excited about it as well.
Yeah. Got it. Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, they wanted it because it was creating good volume for us.
Hmm.
So good incremental volume, premium price point over
Hmm.
that of uh, the rest of the Bud family and
Portfolio.
Michelob
Yeah. Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And so, of course, they wanted it. Any distributors were clamoring for it because of just all the press. And every time I'd go to a sales conference, or now it's called SAMCOM or something like that for Anheuser-Busch meetings, they would always ask, how's it going? How's it going? How's it
Yeah.
going? And I'd be like, it's great. It's growing, incremental sales,
Yeah. Yeah.
dollars, and that's what a distributor wants, those incremental dollars. And that really added to our bottom line.
Unpack a little bit SamCon for folks who don't know what that is and don't maybe understand what those discussions look like. I mean, obviously, this is as you say, it's a hot brand. There's a lot of excitement around it in the Red Network because of the push from above on this, and
Yeah.
because of the premium, all the things you listed. Was there ad spend behind it? What were they doing for ad while you guys were testing it out? Like, were they pushing it on billboards or
Yeah, it
linear
was
TV or
mostly
what?
a lot of print
Yeah,
billboards. I think we had some short spots that ran locally,
yeah, yeah.
not any TV or anything like that. It was like mostly radio, which
Radio.
people used to listen to the radio back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, right. Imagine
No,
that.
and
Yeah,
and the billboards were really impactful. People were
yeah.
curious. But you asked me about, like, things at Samcom.
Yeah, so that's why I asked. Is like distributors talk to each other; they understand what's going on, even
Sure.
if it's not in their market, and they're hearing about this Michelob Ultra, and they see Kimberly. You're at Samcom. They say, "Hey, how's it going?" What the dynamic there is? There's a bunch of different dimensions, right? They want the brand, but they also want to hear about what Anheuser-Busch is going to do to expand and support the brand in
Right.
other markets. So they're people are looking to gather information. Tell us a little bit about what that felt like in 2000. You were the belle of the ball. Everyone
Yeah.
wanted to hear how it was going.
I know, it was pretty. I mean, it was an exciting time.
Yeah.
All those distributors were super excited about it. So Samcom is their sales and marketing meetings. All of the senior executives and the brand managers present their plans for the year to all of the distributors and the distributor key personnel, sales personnel or marketing personnel. And so, and then you can go and like test and try different products, or talk to the brand managers one-on-one about what they're seeing or what, and there's different things that you could try. And it's just
a big convention, basically.
Yeah, it's a big convention. So you could see all the point of sale. They run commercials. They run, and Molson Coors does the same thing. Constellation does the same thing. So it's just your big annual brand meetings. So
now they do, but Samcom, my understanding was, you can speak to this more, like, was pretty pioneering in that regard. Obviously, everyone had meetings, but like my understanding was this was it, man, in terms of the middle tier getting together with the supplier.
Oh, sure.
Anheuser-Busch did it the biggest. Yeah.
So just some history on that, like going from what Samcom and like the Busch family used to put on for the distributors versus what it really is today is kind of very, very different.
How so?
Because back in the day, and I'm talking long time ago, you had performers there. Like, I saw Elton John and Billy Joel and
got it.
Jimmy Buffett, and they'd have concerts for us and entertain us, and it was like, we would love to say that there was, shrimp cocktail. What are those?
Tower, like a seafood tower,
the seafood tower, and the carved ice, and it was just like rolling out the red carpet for us. And then by the time InBev bought it, it was like, hot dogs. It was just different. But corporate America is very different.
Carlos Brito said, "Hey, we have a good relationship with 7-Eleven. Here's some taquitos, and go sell some Limerita." Okay,
right. It was totally different. So yeah, it was just really, really different.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, but this is the heyday was a moment for, it sounds like, Anheuser-Busch, the company, to interface with its distributors, and it sounds like it was a rally the troops opportunity. They really wanted to pump the middle tier, their partners up.
Then give the marching orders. This is what I want you all to do.
Yeah.
And you would come out of there going, let's go do it. And
we're going to run through a wall. Yeah.
I mean, because at that time too, most Anheuser-Busch distributors were still exclusive, but kind of like starting to look, but then obviously when they sold to InBev, the gates just flooded open because August wasn't around and involved anymore.
Right.
He's still around. He wasn't involved anymore. So distributors went out and tried to get, bigger portfolios and better partnerships, not better partnerships. I shouldn't say that, just different partnerships.
Well, and also partnerships that match the market demand at that time. I mean, they get taken over in 2008, and craft beer is back on the upswing after its kind of lull in the late 90s, early 2000s. It's starting to really boom.
Yeah.
We're at kind of the back end of that second boom now. But the distributors that went 100% share of mind, which was a specific, and I think that is a verbatim, I think I'm getting the quote right, 100% share of mind. That was a specific ask from August Busch the third.
Yeah.
And that was made at, I'm guessing, at Samcom, one Samcom somewhere along the way. I forget where he actually made the ask, but the pitch was, or maybe more of a request was, we give you 100% share of our minds.
Yeah.
We want 100% share of mine in return. But some of those distributors, depending on the market, obviously everything's different, but like some Anheuser-Busch distributors that went 100% share of mine and really went exclusive, maybe missed out on some of the early green shoots of the second craft boom, and then found themselves with a totally changed relationship with the mothership once it became Anheuser-Busch InBev.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we got to go get some new brands, man.
Yeah. You put it lightly when August said he requested. It wasn't really a request. fast. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
It was a hard demand. Like,
it was like a Don Corleone was
yeah,
fast.
it was a hard demand. And he like, listen, that guy, he ran a hard bargain. Like, he was on top of the game.
Famously.
He was the
Yeah.
boss. There was no, like, no question who ran the beer industry at that time. Like, and when he said to do something, as I said, you did it.
Yeah.
So, so being exclusive in some marketplaces really kind of took its toll on that distributor, because they didn't have the portfolios that at that time, the Miller or the Coors, there was still some that were, there still are today, some that don't sell, the whole, now it's Molson Coors portfolio. They, some sell Coors and some still sell Miller.
And Miller and Coors were never as demanding that of exclusivity as Anheuser-Busch was, right? They never made similar asks.
No, they
didn't have enough market share to make that.
And then they became so much more powerful with their portfolios, because they had, the Constellations at that time, the Barton contract. They had the Heineken. They had Boston Beer. They had, Sierra Nevada, New Belgium. They had all of those things. I'm not saying that no Anheuser-Busch distributors had them, but not very many. And so then with consolidation and what's taken place over time, Anheuser-Busch distributors have bumped up their portfolios quite a bit, but it took a while.
Yeah. So back in 2002, you go to Samcom. Everyone wants to know how Michelob Ultra is going. Was there any part of Mich Ultra that wasn't going well in those early days? I mean, we think of the brand now and it's this tremendous juggernaut, right? And it is, but like 2002, a brand can be hot and then fail. I'm sure, handled many in the past. So the first year, the first 6 months, that's exciting, but it's also like, here's how I'm thinking about how this needs to grow. Talk to our listeners. Tell us what happened coming out of Samcom, what needed to happen, whether there were missteps or anything like that. Like, because the delta between 2002 and 2024, where it is now, I mean, that's 22 years. And those early years were crucial. Tell us. Sorry. Yeah. Unfortunately, that is a symptom of a history podcast, is you have to grapple with the inexorable march of time. But okay, so it went well in testing. Everyone's excited about it. What happens next?
The different packages, they put it in every package that you can get. We really concentrated on the C-store market. It was important.
Not the slim cans yet, though. Not the 12-ounce slim cans.
No,
those came later.
The slim cans came out really quickly.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
That was a differentiation completely from anything
nothing else was on the market.
Nothing else. The slim can, it had that differentiation to it. Nobody else had it. And now we see slim cans all the time, but nobody had a slim can back then. So that was a huge differentiation. Also, the Latino consumer. The Latino consumer absolutely loved Michelob Ultra. So we had a lot of point of sale and a lot of secondary, like Hispanic billboards. We had advertisements in Spanish. So that was a big thing back then.
Was that a surprise?
That didn't really happen with other brands as much.
Interesting. A
little bit with Bud Light. But the fact that they went full, because in testing, the Latino consumer was curious about that, about Michelob Ultra too.
Interesting.
And so we really needed to focus on them too. Focus on lifestyle, which they owned. At that time, they owned golf. That was like their big, push, because we had golf tournaments, large golf tournaments that we sponsored, and it was all Michelob Ultra.
Wow.
At that time. And then, they started getting into more of the lifestyle, sports and all kinds of stuff. So it really took off. I can't point to really one thing except for the initial test of low carb, low calorie, or less carbs, less calorie, less beer in the smaller can, which we
Mhm.
learned very quickly. Like nobody wants a small can of
Yeah,
beer.
yeah, yeah.
And but I can't point to one thing that was that we had a hiccup on, really.
No.
It was selling just really, really well. And then obviously at that time too, Miller Lite, pivoted and was like,
Yep.
no, but we're the original.
Right, right. The original light beer from
Yeah.
Miller.
And
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
was like, no, but it was like, I don't know, 5-minute abs.
Yeah,
No, we have
right.
4-minute abs.
Right, right. Well, and that was when did they roll out Miller 64? Was that an answer to Michelob Ultra, or was that later?
No, it was later because they really focused on Miller Lite at
As
that
the yeah,
time.
got it.
That was the big focus that
Mhm.
no, well, we have 96 calories. So one more calorie, and
Yeah, yeah.
so that was their focus back then. Miller Lite, I can't speak to other markets because we weren't a huge Miller Lite market. We were a bigger Coors Light market. So
Right.
West Coast
Southwest. Yeah,
tends
yeah,
to,
sure, sure.
be more Coors Light.
Sure.
And then,
Well, talk about history repeating itself. Coors famously resisted rolling out a light beer because they insisted, well, Coors is so light already,
yeah,
you don't need a Coors Light.
right.
Well, they were wrong. They had to. Bill and Joe eventually had to get with the program and
Yeah,
listen to Pete Coors and roll out the Silver Bullet in
right.
'78
Yeah,
or so. But man, funny how history repeats itself. Then
sure.
when Michelob Ultra is out in 2002. Miller Lite's like, well, wait a second. You guys don't need that. We
Yeah,
already have Miller
we already
Lite.
have it. So there was just some kind of continued like new focus
Yeah.
on Miller Lite. I remember in the marketplace with our competitors, they were putting out point of sale to combat
Mhm, mhm.
Michelob Ultra,
Yeah,
and this is the original, like, and so it was, you know, some increased competition back then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on that level.
Well, we've gone the distance here, Kimberly. You've persevered through technical difficulties, and then you've waded your way through all of my questions here on Taplines, and we thank you for it. But for maybe as a way of sort of wrapping up and bringing us back to the present day, as we said, I mean, Michelob Ultra has become really remarkable for probably one of the most important innovations in the American beer industry since the arrival of, or one of the biggest sea changes in the American beer industry since the arrival of Corona in like the late '80s. I mean, it changed the face of the domestic non-craft beer market. I mean, and that was not guaranteed in 2001 when you got the call from the chief
Yeah,
and he said you're going to be a test market for my pet
I
project here
know.
that I'm calling Michelob Ultra. Reflect a little bit on the legacy and of course Golden Eagle would continue to build the brand in the Arizona market until you sold the company in 2016, but so you were a big part of this after 2002 as well. Reflect on the legacy and sort of what Michelob Ultra has become. You saw it from before it was anything.
I know. I mean, it's just I think I was reading the other day that they're counting on it being a 10 share, and
Wow.
that's just in 2 year, like I think it's a 9 share right now, and that's just like unbelievable to me because you also think about like what it's taken to get to this point. Like it's taken a lot of focus. Okay. We Dan and I, my business partner, we always talk about the focus that you need to have behind a brand. Like you
Mhm.
can't let it go. You have to focus. You have to put money behind it. You can't, you've got to be on top of your distributors about what your goals are all the time. And it was a clear goal. I
Mm.
mean, there was no mistaking what our marching orders were. And a lot of times I see brands fail because they don't have that focus behind it, because there's not that support behind it, that you don't have, the company owner the supplier owner that's just that it takes a personal interest in it and has these specific goals and meets with their distributors about how personal it is to them. And it had all the right magic from the start. I mean, it really did. And so the focus was there. The focus has continued to be there. There's been, I've seen some things over the years that I'm like, well, that's not really, Michelob Ultra's mantra or whatever. There's been some things, but for the most part, I think that they've really done a good job with whom Michelob Ultra is.
Yeah.
And and staying within kind of those lines too. They've done a really good job with that. And that's why it's had staying power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And stay at will. And they hope, Anheuser-Busch InBev hopes it grows to 10 share and they hope it grows beyond that too, by the way. But 10 share is the next big milestone. Right. And it is the most important beer in their portfolio right now. And it was always going to be. I mean, we knew, you could see the long-time trend line with Bud Light. That was always going to happen. But it happened maybe a little bit earlier than anyone expected it to. And Michelob Ultra, continues to just pound away at it. So it's been a remarkable ride. Kimberly, thank you so much for taking our Taplines audience on that ride before and after 2001. We thank you for joining us. And you know what? You're welcome back anytime. I want to hear, and I bet our listeners do too, I want to hear more war stories. I think you got a few more stories about
stories.
I think you got a few more stories about the chief.
I love to tell stories. Like I love to tell I have some stories and I always joke with, Kate Bernat, I always joke with her, like, I'm going to write a book one of these days. And we're always like joking, like, we're going to write our book one of these days. And I have so many stories about my lifetime in this business and how just some of the situations that I've been in, some of the discussions that I've had, like, there's just, it has been a wild ride. And I am so blessed to be a part of this industry because it is truly the best industry. And I love being a part of it. And I love telling stories. So thank you for including me in your storytelling today.
That is our pleasure. We literally could not do it without you. I read, but I've not had the experience. And many of our listeners have not either. So we need to experience it vicariously through folks who've been there like you. You're welcome back anytime, Kimberly Clements. We appreciate it so much. I don't know what I'll be drinking this weekend, but when I see the Michelob Ultra on the shelf, I will have a little grin because I know the story of how it got there.
Yeah.
Taplines is recorded in Richmond, Virginia, and produced by yours truly and Darby Seaside, who, along with the talented Shane Farrick, composed our delightful soundtrack. Just listen to it. I also want to give a quick shout out to the entire VinePair team, and especially co-founders Adam Teeter and Josh Mallon, editor-in-chief Joanna Sciarrino, managing editor Tim McCurdy, and art director Danielle Grinberg, who designed our lovely Taplines logo. And of course, a big thank you to you, yes, you listener, for spending time with us week in and week out. We literally couldn't do this without you. I'm Dave Infante, and I'll catch you next time.